I think an example of, like in your sacred diaries and so on, you're trying to move a paperclip through
By
some
faith.
sort of by
Yes,
faith, and then
yeah.
hoping a Japanese admiral in a midget submarine or something turns up at the door. I mean, these are examples to me of almost like exaggerating what we Christians actually might privately believe or
Well,
practice.
in the 80s, it was hardly exaggerating, I have to be honest. There's a little bit in the diary about a Californian who comes to talk about the gifts. Would be a Californian, wouldn't it, I suppose? And he says, we can all practice word of knowledge right now. And this is a true story. So this young man stands up later on and says, points at this girl and says, you've got a pain in your lower abdomen. And she says she hasn't, and he says she has, and she says she hasn't, and he says she has because the Lord told him, and maybe she hasn't got the faith to feel it, which is so utterly ludicrous. But there's something for Christians in the mid-80s and the 90s to suddenly see the sacred cows, not just shot, but dead, some of them, lifting your hands in the air. There's nothing sacred about that. Using a funny, soupy voice, which is one of the killers, you know, it's one of the ways people are held down. All of these things were oppressing people, not maliciously, but because people are frightened that if they set people free, they'll take a freedom that is bad for them or hurt them.
And maybe that's the reason, is it, that some people are disenchanted with church, with faith, because they're still attached to some of those images, to some of those expectations and so on?
Well, but some are there because of them. We did a weekend called A Hunger to Belong. And my goodness, the pungency of that need to belong to something. And I mean, we know churches all over the place where people just love the fact that the minister knows what's what. He knows what you should do, what you should think, where you should go, how you should feel. And I suppose a lot of people are longing for it to be real, to discover God actually turns up. I mean, I mentioned the prodigal son's father. And in theory, we are to expect an incredible encounter with God. Parties, fatted calves, all the rest of it. And in your heart, the knowledge that you're forgiven, that everything's all right. You know that wonderful idea, it's okay, it's all right. Where is it? Where is it?
And what is the answer there? I mean, I've myself in ministry have met with people who have more or less felt that every Sunday they've come out of church feeling lashed again by guilt and so on. Well, I'm meant to feel guilty, so I do feel guilty and so on. And what do you think is the remedy for, or is there a remedy for that sort of thing, that people go into church and have this life encounter, this life-changing encounter with God?
It's not an easy question to answer, but one of the things people have to do is to trust their own passions sometimes, I think. I'll give you an example. A lady knocked on our door one day, not long ago, and we met her in Tesco's, don't know how, but in Tesco's, and said we lived down the road. So she came and knocked on the door. And she said, I want to ask you what to do. She said, my son lives in Australia and he's gay and he's going to get married and I want to go to his wedding. And the people in my church say I can't go because I would be tacitly approving of the gay lifestyle. Leave aside all the issues there, but she said, but I want to go, I love him. And she's a new member of the church, so obviously she thinks, this can't be right. These people are experienced people. They're actually, I think, surviving like people who are in a garrison instead of a home. And you're not supposed to advise people directly, are you? But I actually said to her, if you don't go, Jesus isn't going, so you go. And she rang up her son and actually got his partner on the phone, and he burst into tears and he said, it's so wonderful that you're going to come, even though you disapprove of our relationship. It means so much to me. So that impulse in her to do the loving thing that God has put in her is very dependable. But when you've got a little Greek chorus of people who have views on every single damn thing, telling you what you can and can't do, it's very difficult to do that.
So basically we're talking here about another encounter with grace, aren't we?
Yeah, the undeserved kindness of God. Yeah, we do talk a lot about grace, about the rocks of the law on one side and the swamp of license on the other. And then this wonderful, ingenious little curling path of grace that can do things that you never ever thought of.